There's nothing really to talk about there. It's just a recasting. A little soon to announce a show like that, I think. Yeah, no, big nope. You guys just want to rank some stuff today? Yeah, let's rank some stuff today. There we go. Gotta get into character after all. All right. Here we go. Whenever people bring up Batman in conversation, one of the common complaints you'll hear about the character is just how prevalent he is in modern popular culture, and that is a fair complaint. Since 1989, there have been over 10 live-action movies starring this guy, and there's going to be an 11th one coming out next year as soon as they can get back to work to finish the damn thing. That's a lot of Batman no matter how you slice it. But things are a little bit different on television, and in particular with regards to animated versions of Batman. Between 1968 and 2014, there have only been 7 different animated shows based on the Caped Crusader. Granted, most of these shows have debuted within the last 30 years, but regardless, Batman's presence on television, and again in animated form in particular, is nowhere near as omnipresent as it is in the movie theater. Still, Batman's animated exploits have left a mark all on their own. But how do these different shows stack up against each other? Which ones are actually good and which ones are actually kind of bad? How do they interpret this character for the different era that they were made in? Well, that's what this list is truly trying to do. Showcase the different styles of Batman cartoons that there are and highlight what makes each one of them worthwhile or maybe not so worthwhile. Because let's be honest here, we all know what number one's gonna be. I don't think anybody is gonna be even remotely surprised by that. But how do the others stack up to it? Let's find out. Keep in mind that this list is only gonna focus on Batman specific shows. We're not gonna talk about Super Friends or Justice League or anything like that. I only wanted to talk about shows that are specifically about Batman and his core mythology. And with that said, let's kick this list off with a show that is actually pretty bad. Number 7.
The Adventures of Batman with Robin Boy Wonder.
Okay, so this one requires a little bit of history. In 1968, Filmation Studios released the Batman Superman Hour, a 60-minute show that was split into 2 parts. The first part was a Batman adventure, and the second part was a Superman adventure. This was actually Batman's very first appearance in animation in any capacity. Later that year, the Batman segments would be spun off into their own show, The Adventures of Batman. Eventually, the show would be renamed again to Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder. The show would last for less than a year and consist of 17 episodes. The show is very much a product of its time. It's actually a step below Hanna-Barbera in terms of quality. The animation is very stiff and limited. The stories are really nothing to write home about. The overall tone is a little bit more straightforward than the Adam West show of the time, but is still very heavily a kid-friendly version of Batman. And that's the show's ultimate sin. Despite being the first appearance of Batman in animation, there's really nothing separating this from any other action-adventure Saturday morning cartoon of the era. There's nothing unique or special about it in any real way. Hell, in the book Batman, The Definitive History of the Dark Knight, they only dedicate 1 page to this show, and this is a 400-page book dedicated to every single aspect of the Batman. This book is heavy, by the way. There are some people who do consider this the unofficial 4th season of the Adam West Batman show, and I can kind of see what they're getting at here, but overall, it's just an unremarkable piece of television. A show that was lost in a sea of other better shows of the time. And especially when you consider all the other shows on this list, just what they did for Batman as a character and how they reinterpreted his mythology for each generation, this really is an easily forgettable, unremarkable show. And if you really are looking for a 4th season of the Adam West show, then the next entry on this list might be better suited for that. Number 6.
Join me, Batman.
And me, Robin the Boy Wonder.
And that girl. And me too, Batmite.
In the super new adventures of
Batman.
In 1977, Filmation released The New Adventures of Batman. The show only lasted 4 months and ran for 17 episodes. This show was later bundled together with another Filmation show, Tarzan Lord of the Jungle, to create the Batman Tarzan Hour in late 1977. 70s were a weird time.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
For all intents and purposes, this show was basically a continuation of the previous Filmation show. It was more or less the same thing. Same crappy animation, same basic setup and premise for every single episode. There are, however, 2 major differences between The New Adventures of Batman and The Adventures of Batman. The first is the addition of Batmite to the cast. He essentially replaced Alfred, but not in a good way. He acts as the annoying comic relief of the series. He's basically the Scrappy-Doo of the Batman universe. He's luckily not a major aspect of the show and doesn't really interfere with the plots all that much, but every time he's on screen, you can't help but groan at him. The most I can say is that at least it's something different. The second major difference on the show, and an actual positive difference, is the casting of Adam West and Burt Ward as Batman and Robin respectively. Almost 10 years after their show was canceled, they come back to the roles that made them famous and don't skip a beat at all. They sound just as good here as they did in their live action television show. And that to me is what makes The New Adventures of Batman a better show than its predecessor. Just having West and Ward on the cast just gives it an overall higher sense of quality, even if the actual quality of the show might be a little bit lesser in certain respects. But regardless, this is basically just the same show. Hell, the definitive guide only dedicates 2 paragraphs to this show. There's a lot of artwork from it, sure, but not a whole lot of information or history. It just gets lost in the shuffle and briefly mentioned during the subject of Super Friends. This book's very hard to hold up. Okay, we got the crap out of the way. Let's start talking about actually good Batman cartoons. Number 5. The Batman is the often forgotten successor to Batman the Animated Series. Released in 2004 in preparation for the release of Batman Begins, this show depicts a younger Bruce Wayne in the early days of his Batman career, getting used to the idea of being Gotham's new defender. The show is more of a kid-friendly adaptation of the character, with flashier visuals and a much more toyetic design to it. All of the villains got radical new visual looks to them, and Batman had a slew of new gadgets for kids to hunt for in the toy aisle. On the surface, this show is really more or less just another adaptation of Batman. It doesn't really try to rock the boat too much in terms of style or storytelling. It's just trying to be a Batman cartoon. And that doesn't really sit well with a lot of people, especially when you consider the show that preceded it. But what I really liked about this show, and what I don't think enough people talk about when they talk about the Batman, is the fact that Batman actually evolved over the course of the show's 5-season run. Every season introduced a new element to the show's overall mythology that would wind up changing Bruce Wayne and Batman in certain ways, so that by the time the show actually ended, he was a completely different person from when he started. Season 1 was all about Bruce Wayne trying to be more comfortable in his role as Batman. Season 2 was about establishing a better relationship with the Gotham City Police Department. Season 3 introduced Batgirl to the show. Season 4 finally introduced Robin. And Season 5 had him teaming up with different members of the Justice League. Each season actually had Batman learn and grow from his experiences, and that just wasn't something you saw in kids' cartoons of the time. If you missed this show the first time around, definitely go back and give it a second look. You're in for a very worthwhile experience and a very fun depiction of the character. He even fights Dracula at one point. It was pretty cool. Number 4. It probably was a little unfair of me to call The Batman forgotten. I mean, it does have a pretty solid fan base online, and it lasted long enough that by this point, the kids who grew up with it are probably now old enough to remember the show very fondly. On the other hand, I don't know anybody who remembers Beware the Batman, the 2013 adaptation of the character that took things in a fairly radically different direction. Fans don't really remember the show all that much, critics don't really remember the show all that much, hell, Cartoon Network forgot about the show while they were airing it. They just put it on hiatus in the middle of the first season and eventually, sometime a year later, just quietly let it die on Adult Swim. Which is a shame because despite its flaws, Beware the Batman really did try to do some new and interesting things with the character. Not all of it paid off, but when it worked really well and offered up some really riveting television. The show put much more of a focus on Batman's detective work than anything else, with many moments of the show coming across like it could have come from Guy Ritchie's Sherlock or even the BBC version of Sherlock. It also put a lot of focus on Batman's lesser-known adversaries. Characters like Professor Pig and Magpie were used on the show to really great effect, and the way the show reinvented the villain Anarchy was truly great. It's one of the best reinterpretations of a Batman character I've ever seen. I also really like the way the show looked, not necessarily in terms of the character designs, although that was pretty good in its own, but the way the characters moved and blended in with the shadows. It was really cool and really unique from what was happening on TV at the time. Not all of it was a slam dunk, however. Katana was Batman's partner in the show, and while she was fine, this could have been filled by literally anybody. It didn't specifically have to be Katana. And I have never been a fan of the Jason Stathaming of Alfred, having him be this badass character and having him talk like this. But had the show been given the chance, it truly could have been something unique. A different take on Batman that focused on the lesser known aspects of his mythology and a modern day detective show for kids. There's not a whole lot of those out there. Instead, it's just lost to time. Well, not really. It is on HBO Max, but did anyone subscribe to that? Might as well be lost to time then. Number 3. It takes a lot of guts to do a lighthearted adaptation of Batman in 2008. This was, of course, the year of The Dark Knight and was coming after many other previous years of depicting Batman as a dark, cool dude for serious adults. But then out of nowhere comes Batman Brave and the Bold to say no! Batman can be lighthearted and fun and silly, and you will love it just as much as you did all the other versions of the character. And son of a bitch, they were right. Batman the Brave and the Bold is a masterpiece of old-fashioned comic book storytelling. The show just screams 50s and 60s Batman, and it does so proudly. It's a breath of fresh air amongst the sea of darker, more serious Batman stories that we've been getting for the past 20 years by that point. It offers bold, exciting, often legitimately funny stories that celebrate the character rather than belittle him. Hell, they found a way to make Batmite work and work really well rather than just making him an annoying side character. The Brave and the Bold gets its title from the comic book series of the same name. Much like the comic book series, the show is all about Batman teaming up with different heroes from the DC universe to help him fight crime. But this is still a Batman show through and through. Sure, it's fun to see him team up with everybody from Superman all the way down to Buona Beast, but the characters really more so act as setup for Batman to find himself in situations that he wouldn't normally find himself in. And just because the show is a little bit more lighthearted and fun, doesn't mean that they skimped on the darker, more serious aspects of the character. It can get pretty heavy at times. In particular, the episode Chill of the Night depicted the murder of Thomas and Martha Wayne better than a lot of the other adaptations of Batman have done. It was a show that wasn't afraid to do what it had to do to tell a fantastic Batman story, and it used the entirety of the DC universe to accomplish that feat. It was a show that proved that Batman could do anything and really be anything. And funnily enough, so did the next entry on our list. Number 2. Here's a dumb idea for a show. Take Batman, one of the most recognizable characters in all of popular culture, and strip away just about everything that makes him recognizable. Instead, set him in a Blade Runner-esque future with a whole new set of villains to fight. Maybe one or two of his classic rogues show up, but no one else. Give him a brand new suit that looks very different from anything we've seen before. And hell, don't even make him Bruce Wayne. Make him a punk teenager voiced by the idiot older brother from Boy Meets World. There is no way this show could be possibly good. But somehow, it was f***ing great. Batman Beyond really is a miracle of creativity over marketing. What started off as an obvious toy ad quickly became something more, with characters and iconography just as good, if not better, than everything that came before it. Terry McGinnis is the perfect Batman for this type of show. We get to see him evolve from arrogant youth to true superhero in a way that mirrors a lot of other classic teen heroes like Peter Parker or any of the Robins. It's a very fascinating journey, and it's one that wouldn't fit a character like Bruce Wayne. Speaking of Bruce Wayne, he fits his new role as angry old man perfectly. But through Terry, he learns how to open himself up more and remembers what it truly meant to be Batman. It wasn't just the suit, it was who he was as a person. Everything about Batman Beyond is just so memorable and perfectly tuned to this specific version of the show. All of the new villains are instantly unique and timeless. The soundtrack is the perfect blend of classic Batman themes and techno rock. The Batsuit design itself is so schway, it has yet to be improved upon in subsequent incarnations. In fact, some redesigns of it actively ruin it. What should have been a colossal one-season misfire has turned into a 3-season and a movie legacy that's just as fondly remembered, if not more so, than the number 1 entry on this list. Number 1. Told you it wasn't going to be a surprise. What? What could I possibly have to say about Batman the Animated Series that hasn't already been said by countless other smarter people than me? Like I said before, this list wasn't intended to crown the singular greatest Batman cartoon of all time. It's pretty obvious what that was. Rather, this was more so a case to celebrate all the different Batman cartoons and highlight what makes each one of them unique and worth watching. Each one has something different and fascinating to say about Batman. Unlike a lot of other animated adaptations of superheroes out there, there is a Batman cartoon for just about everybody, no matter what your personal taste is. Maybe you want just a timeless depiction of Batman like in the animated series, or maybe you want to see a Batman evolve and change over the years like he does on The Batman. Maybe you're looking for more of a classic detective show, or maybe you're looking for a fun throwback. Or hell, maybe you're into kitschy cartoons from your parents' and grandparents' generation and just want something super simple. There are 2 Batman shows for you in that respect. There's no shame in that. It really does speak to the strength of the character that he's so adaptable in this way. The writers and artists can make him do whatever they want him to do, and he can come out the other end still recognizably Batman. No matter what kind of Batman you prefer, there is a show for you, and all of these shows are worth checking out. Even the bad ones, if at least for an episode or 2. There hasn't been a dedicated solo Batman cartoon since Beware the Batman went off the air, but here's hoping we get a new one fairly soon, and it offers its own unique stamp on the character so that the legend of the Dark Knight can continue for the next generation. But what's your favorite animated adaptation of Batman? Is it the animated series, or is it one of the other ones? And how do you want to see the next Batman cartoon handle the character and his mythology? Let me know down below or anywhere on the internet. Before anyone asks, no, I did not forget about the new Batman adventures. I just lumped it in with Batman the Animated Series because, let's be honest, it's just season 4 of Batman the Animated Series. They lump it together on the Blu-ray and all the digital collections. It's part of the same show. If you don't like that, make your own list. There will be Amazon affiliate links in the description to all of these shows for you to check out on DVD or Blu-ray. I'll also put in parentheses what streaming services they're on, because they're not all on DC Universe. Some of them are on HBO Max, and some of them aren't streaming at all yet. I will also have an Amazon affiliate link to this bad boy right here. This was very helpful in writing this episode, and it has a lot of information on Batman, from his beginning all the way up until, I think, the production of Justice League. Very informative, very worth checking out. Also acts as a good home defense weapon. You could really kill a guy with this thing. And of course, don't forget that we have new videos on this channel every single Tuesday and Wednesday, with Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern being Wulff Den Live. So subscribe to see all of that, like this video, and share with a friend who enjoys themselves some good old-fashioned Batman cartoons. Of course, if you're friends with somebody who doesn't enjoy a Batman cartoon here and there, dump them. They're not really your friend. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time.